and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. America First with Sebastian Gorka, today at 3, right before Sean Thompson at 4 on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. And our next guest writing about the topic we've discussed a couple times over the last couple weeks since the court filing that Special Prosecutor John Durham made, outlining essentially a conspiracy hatched by the Clinton campaign to create fraudulent information and peddle that fraudulent information to the FBI and CIA. So they opened a fraudulent investigation into Trump as a presidential candidate and the Trump campaign, so that they had fraudulent charges they could level against president candidate Trump at the time and his campaign. You see the ecosystem, how that works? Isn't that nice? Mm-hmm. Well, it seems like Durham is fleshing it out after seemingly a long time with little discernible progress, which was much to the frustration of President Trump, and he expressed to Attorney General Barr before his presidency came to an end. For more on the topic of the impact and import of what Durham outlined, because, of course, it's not being covered by the D.C. press corps outlets, unsurprisingly, because they were part of that fraud that I just described. Kevin Brock joins us, former Assistant Director of Intelligence for the FBI and former Principal Deputy Director of the National Counterterrorism Center. Kevin, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us. So the message that John Durham sent the country and the political establishment, and I guess Clinton campaign, Clintonistas in her campaign, and maybe Hillary herself. What is that? What is that message, do you think?
Well, it was a brilliant move, frankly. I think, as I pointed out in my article, that John Durham's not in a position where he can hold a press conference and just let everybody know how his investigation is going on. And but he was making progress. It wasn't easy to let the American people know. And as you pointed out, there's a sense of frustration that after a year and a half, nothing really has been done except a couple minor indictments here and there of peripheral players. So he files this motion to the court, which addressed a potential conflict of interest issue among the attorneys that are representing whomever in the investigation. It was a pretty innocuous motion, routine, but then plants this story inside the motion itself that telegraphed the progress that he has made and outlined a pretty disturbing effort by the Clinton campaign through their law firm and Michael Sussman to entice the FBI to start an investigation of ostensible ties between the Trump campaign and the Russians, so that in the middle of the campaign in September of 2016, they could announce to the world that the FBI was investigating, the Trump campaign. It was just a kind of a shameless use of an important government agency to advance political goals, and that kind of came out loud and clear.
I mean, it's shameless is a bit of an understatement when you're talking about using agencies that have the power the FBI and the CIA does, isn't it?
You're right. Yeah, it's fraudulent. It's basically lying to the FBI, which Sussman has been charged with subsequently. You're not allowed to do that. And people might think, well, all right, so he withheld some critical information, but you're triggering a massive investigation. Look, this wasn't a routine fraud against some, innocent party or white-collar crime or something like that. This was trying to get the FBI to investigate a presidential candidate, and so it was asking the FBI to dedicate significant resources on a very touchy political issue, and without telling them, oh, by the way, I'm giving you this information on behalf of my client, Hillary Clinton.
Bill Barr, in his new book, there's been some excerpts released, tackles his dismissal of the case against General Flynn He defends it. I knew there would be a maelstrom, and now I'm a Russian agent, and so on and so forth. But he characterized what the FBI did in the General Flynn case as an abuse of power. And it seems to me, and that the source of a lot of the frustration that people have with the FBI and with the federal government generally is abuses of power happen, but nobody's really responsible other than maybe to get a couple of demerits on their permanent record from an inspector general. And even when it comes to essentially trying to rig an election with the help of the top law enforcement agency in the country, abuse of power. Maybe the lawyer gets a fine and a suspended license for a year, and so on and so forth. But nothing really happens to the principal movers and actors in all of this skullduggery. That seems to me the frustration as much as the time it takes to even get as far as Durham has gotten.
Yeah, and I think that's the important message of what was put in that motion is that, look, we are looking at individuals higher up the food chain, and that this is important. I think there is a determination on the part of John Durham to hold accountable as many people as he possibly can, even if he doesn't have indictable charges to file. There's going to be a story. There will be indictments, I'm convinced of that, but there's going to be a story around those indictments that certainly indicate people were taking steps to create a suspicion that wasn't warranted or merited, and that convulsed this country for how many years.
Well,
and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Well, will the indictments reach Hillary Clinton?
The indictments could reach Hillary Clinton if people cooperate with John Durham and indicate that all of these things that were done at her personal direction. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't know about that, but this is a classic investigation. He is picking off people that he can with indictments that are readily available. He is interviewing people, gaining cooperation, saying, look, either you're first in the boat or you're going to be left out in the ocean and be fair game. And then locking their testimony into grand jury, and based on that testimony, he will start indicting others. So it depends on what he's told, what he can get other people to say and disclose, and the cooperation that he gains.
And with respect to Durham, you made a salient point too. This court filing essentially makes him unfireable, and he certainly knows that too. He can't have a press conference that's inappropriate, but he reminded everybody what he's doing, that it's substantive, and it essentially makes it impossible for the Biden administration to fire him, even if they wanted to. Not unlike it was impossible, or it's certainly injudicious if Trump would have fired Mueller, even though he wanted to.
Yeah, I think that is an important point that came out of all of this. It's a little bit of a read between the lines, but it is, as you say, salient because the Biden DOJ had already signaled that they were going to be friendly to the actors of this whole drama when they took Andrew McCabe's firing from the FBI for lying to investigators, basically whitewashed it on his personal record, and then restored his retirement annuity. So they sent their own signal as to how these people are going to be treated if they are in fact investigated. I'm convinced that if Durham even got to a point where he might indict certain people, you might expect to see some pardons out of the president. That's how kind of disgustingly political this whole thing is. So, again, that's conjecture, but it's a signal nonetheless by the Biden DOJ. So Durham is sending his own, saying, look, I know there's sentiment out there that I'm not worth it, I'm a drain on the taxpayer dollar, I'm not making progress, etc. That gives the Biden DOJ top cover to say, all right, let's just cut bait and end this. They can't now, not after what's been exposed in that motion.
He is Kevin Brock, former Assistant Director of Intelligence for the FBI and former Principal Deputy Director of the National Counterterrorism Center. Kevin, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
You bet. My pleasure.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank. It's a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your story. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
Hi, I'm Neenu Gupta from Bardell and Bottega by Painting with a Twist in Park Ridge, where you find your inner artist and you and your friends can paint, sip wine, and party. I want to thank Signature Bank for being there for me when I needed them during tough times.